This is the Run Your Day podcast with Dan Hafner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back into another episode of the Run Your Day podcast. My name is Dan Hafner. I am super excited to bring you guys another episode here today. We're going to talk about some really cool stuff, maybe a little bit more of a technical episode for you guys. But we're joined by Robert Riopel.
Oh, you're overthinking it, Dan.
Oh,
it's
no.
Riopel.
Robert Riopel. Sorry about that, Robert.
That's all good.
So Robert is an international best-selling author. He's an app designer like yours truly. Well, I shouldn't say I'm a designer. I'm more of a builder. He's an entrepreneur. He's a trainer. He's someone who's spent a lot of years traveling around the world, doing cool things, training people. He's a thought leader. He's awesome. We're going to pick his, as we said before, we're going to pick his one brain cell. I'm just kidding. He's much smarter man than that. Welcome to the show, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing great. And I'll tell you, the reason I joke around saying I have one brain cell left, because for me, it's a reminder that there's still something to learn. And because the moment I think I know it all, I know I'm done. So I use it as a nice little anchor to trigger in. Just keep learning, just keep learning, just keep learning. What do? We just keep learning.
I love it. That's a very good approach to have. That's a very good approach. So I know I didn't really go with a specific intro because I have a lot of things I want to ask you. But just give us a little bit of a better synopsis than I did about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, international best-selling author with my first book, Success Left a Clue. I am currently writing my second one, which is called The Authority Key. And for the last 20 years, I've been blessed to travel around the world, I've personally trained over 500,000 students in 3 to 5 day trainings where I'm up on stage up to 12 hours a day, living my passion. And, that came around from me going through a struggle. My wife and I, who I'm very blessed. Now, do you go Daniel, Dan? Which way do you
Dan.
go?
Yes.
Dan. Okay. I'm blessed that, like my wife and I, we met when we were 13. We started dating when we were 16 and we got married when we were 19. And we are about to celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary this year. Now, please don't do the math of how old I am. And, both coming from families where we're the youngest. I'm youngest of 4, she's youngest of 5. And our families, quite on the, let's say, what some people call the wrong side of the tracks. But we didn't know that we were poor. We just grew up, but we were taught work ethic. We were taught, doesn't matter if you like the job, you do what you need to do to take care of your family, whether you like it or not. And that's what I started doing. But all of a sudden, 21 years of age, I've been working for a number of years. All of a sudden, I'm being laid off from my third company. And I'm going, I'm working hard. I'm staying loyal to these guys. Why do they keep shutting these places down? And I started, because the economy was bad, I started delivering pizzas for Domino's Pizza. It was the only thing I could do till I found that real job that had security. Well, because of my work ethic, a short time later, I get to become a manager of a store. My wife becomes my assistant. We start working open to close 7 days a week. And a year and a half in, we're now qualified to be franchisees when our franchisee gives us the news that he's getting out of Domino's and he's selling his 2 stores. I went into panic mode because I knew the moment the store sold, the managers are let go because the new owners want to come in with their own team. And all of a sudden I'm, thinking we're about to both lose our jobs. And so I'm like, okay, our answer, honey, we got to start calling the other franchisees. We got to figure this out and find out who we can work for. And she looks at me and she goes, why would we do that? We're qualified to be franchisees. Why don't we buy this store? And I looked at her, I'm like, because we don't have any money. That's why we don't buy the store. Like, hello. My wife, being raised by a single mother, taught her kids, you figure it out. So over the next 4 to 5 months, we started finding out, how do you buy a business if you don't have money? And we made a lot of mistakes, or what I now call learning curves, because every time something didn't go right, we figured out, now what do we say different? How do we do it? And next thing you know, we didn't get the funding for our store. We ended up getting 100% financing for both the stores he had for sale. And we became franchisees. And it was like, oh, we're successful. And wrong answer. I think you'll agree, Dan, there's a big difference between knowing how to run a store and how to run a business.
Yeah. I've never run a store, but I can imagine. Yeah.
And it took us about 2 years of just struggling. Like, hey, we can't afford an account. We'll do it on our own. That solopreneur. People think they're entrepreneurs, but they tend to be solopreneurs. Yeah. And 2 years in, we're in a mess of trouble. The government's going, hello, you're in business. There's these things called financials that you're supposed to be providing. So we had to get caught up. And as we started getting caught up, we started figuring it out and we started doing well for the time. But we started spending more money than we were earning, coming from those poor backgrounds, like, money, look what we can do. And by the time we were franchisees for 8 years, we're over $150,000 in personal debt and going down quick. And that's when we were introduced to personal development. And all of a sudden, a 3-day training changed our life because we learned why we were in debt. More importantly, we learned to take ownership, quit blaming other people for our debt. And then we learned some specific skills of what we could do if we wanted to get out. And because we took action, and that was the biggest difference. And I'll look back and I'll be honest, we took action because we had to. We were so deep in debt and we were so frustrated. We knew we had to do something different. And we took the action. And next thing you know, we go from over $150,000 in debt to actually retiring completely financially free 9 months later at the age of 32. And
9 months later?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what our mind said too. We were like, wow, if that information gave us this result, what would more do? And that's when we dived in to learn from everybody we could. I'm a big believer. Don't just learn one way. Don't just learn from one person. Take nuggets of gold from a lot of people. And that's when I found my passion was to be a trainer. And because of that, I've been able now, actually, it's funny, April 1st of this year, no April Fool's joke, but it's actually the 20th anniversary of my wife retiring financially free for the first time.
Congratulations. That's so cool. That's quite the story. So I guess the first thing I want to say, the wisdom of a woman, right? Like when I heard you say that about like, well, hey, why don't we do that? Why don't we just buy this? And you're over here like, oh, we can't do this. And she's just like, no, we can figure it out. Like, I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you talk a lot about money, right? Like, and so I'm curious to get your take on this because I see this, and this happened with me, and I see this happening with some of my clients, and I see it happening with some of the people I work with and other masterminds and groups that I'm in. There's this, like, everyone has this money ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, we all kind of have this artificial ceiling that, you know, some people might think $100 is a lot of money, and maybe you're in a situation where you're like, $100, but then to some people, $100 is like $1,
A tip.
like, you know, $10,000. Like I tell you, hey, this thing costs $10,000, and you're like, oh my God. But then, you know, some people that's like, okay, that's fine. Where do I sign? Right.
Yep.
So I'm curious, like, where do you, maybe I'm jumping ahead a couple questions, but like, where do you see that as a common theme in people that you work with and that you train? And how do you get
Without a
people
doubt.
to break through those mental ceilings?
Well, you know, in my most recent research over the last couple of years, I've been working on what I call the 4 currencies. And this is something going into my new book. And one of the currencies is the currency of money. And there's what's called, everybody has a zone. If you have too little money in your life, you have poverty and there's stress. And I'll tell you, when I was deep in debt, that stress, I've never experienced anything like it.
Yeah.
So that was the bottom of my zone. The top of my zone, there's something called affluenza. And when you have affluenza, that's mean all of a sudden you hit a certain amount of money, and it's everybody's zone's different. And depending on who you are as a person, your zone will change as well. But when you hit affluenza, you know you've hit that when you start doing investments without doing due diligence. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Here's some money. Or, you know, I've got extra money. What am I going to do with it? Well, let's buy that nice vehicle, or let's buy that boat for the lake. And you start doing crazy things. So your way you increase that zone is you have to work on you. This is one of the reasons I do so much introspection, so much work on myself. I love the universal principle that says your wealth can only grow to the extent that you do. And to give you an example of that, Dan, is when my wife and I were in Domino's Pizza, our poverty level was about 40,000. Every time we got close to only making 40,000, I was stressed out beyond belief. We both were. Our affluenza level was about 100,000 a year. Every time we crossed that, and it was like we started doing those crazy things. Now, today, because we've worked so much on us and I like my lifestyle, my poverty level is about 200,000. My affluenza level is about 1 million. Every time I start making over 1 million a year, I start doing some interesting things. So that's where, but now because I'm aware, I go, if I'm starting to make those decisions and not do my due diligence, I need to work more on me because it's time to increase that. And it's not that they both increase at the same. I can keep my poverty level down by the lifestyle, say to 200,000 or even 100, but I can increase my affluenza so my zone's bigger. Because when you're in the zone, your life flows. It's when you go out of that zone that stress, struggle really starts to really bother you or really come in, and it just expands on each other. So does that kind of answer what you're saying? You were asking?
Yeah. So I mean, you talk about like your money only stretches as much as you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like what does that involve? Is it only mindset? Is it actually putting it into practice? I mean, you guys paid off 150K in debt in 9 months. I mean, was that all mindset? Was that practical application?
So,
What was that?
See, you went to the space that most people went to. See, when I say I went from over $150,000 in debt to financially free in 9 months, it was like, you paid off $150,000 in 9 months. No, I didn't say that. So let's go to the definition of financial freedom. There's something called passive income, which is money that works for you instead of you working. And it can be business, it can be investments. We didn't know what passive income was, so we had none. Your expenses, you're always going to have expenses. So we had expenses really high. Didn't know what passive income was, so had none. So we'd never achieve. We'll work the rest of our life. And so when we started learning about passive income and the power of it, we started looking at what could we do as a passive income. And we came across 2 at the time, passive incomes that were online investments that had a stock portfolio part of it, as well as a residual part. So we had an income coming in plus a stock building. And we aggressively, and here's what I want your listeners to hear. We aggressively took a look at our life and said, what don't we need right now that we have all these expenses with, that if we were to get rid of it, would bring our expenses down? How could we simplify our life so our passive income doesn't have to work as hard? Because the definition of financial freedom is when you have more passive income, when it's greater than your expenses, you're financially free because now you don't have to work if you don't want to. So at the 9-month mark, we had aggressively dropped all of our expenses, sold the boat that we weren't using, sold the second car we weren't using because we were always together, and we brought our expenses down. And was it painful in some ways? Yes. But we were looking at that long-term goal. So we dropped those expenses down so that those 2 passive incomes, it didn't take long before they passed each other, 9 months. Now picture this. We're financially free. Are we wealthy? No, we're barely getting by, which means we're also servicing the debt we still have, but we have enough passive income to do that. Does this make sense so far?
It does. And I guess I see where you went with that. Cause like, I can see where you have people that go like, oh, you paid all that off. But like you said, it's so I'm reminded of Rich Dad Poor Dad, the Robert Kiyosaki, the rat race game that I love to play. If you guys have never played that, the cash flow game, I have it on my iPad. I play it all the time. Like I love it. It's such a cool.
Cash flow's amazing.
It is. Yep. It's such a simple, cool game. But that's what you're talking about.
Let me squirrel on this. First time I ever played cash flow was in a room as a student with 1,000 people playing cash flow all at the same time. 5 people to a board. It was phenomenal. 200 boards playing, 1,000 people playing. It was amazing.
It sounds a little bit like me. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And I want to get to the magic of what happened though, too, because here's the thing. Before financial freedom, my wife and I were working 50, 60, 70 hours or more a week, just earning that living. And I know a lot of your listeners can relate to that, especially if they're entrepreneurs. Yep. All of a sudden, we're financially free. We don't have to work. We freed up 50, 60, 70, 80 hours all of a sudden a week. And Dan, if I was to sit there and say, hey, Dan, here's an extra 40 hours to do with whatever you want, do you think there's possibilities of what you could do with that time? Right?
Yeah.
So we took 10 hours of that time. We said, we freed up all this time. Let's now take 10 hours a week and focus on just creating wealth with those 10 hours. And there's another universal principle that says what you focus on expands. So also now we had the time freedom, which was way more valuable than the money freedom. And because we took 10 hours, we didn't end up having to stretch ourselves extra because we'd freed up all that time. We ended up being able to focus 10 hours a week on creating wealth, and also in creating wealth became so much easier. So a message I have to your audience is so many people go, I want to become wealthy. And I want them to say, here's what I want to say to them. Get financially free first, free up the time. So now creating wealth is a lot easier and a lot less stressful. because you're not trying to figure out how to do it while you're trying to survive at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that message. Cause I think a lot, and it's funny. I just spoke with someone in another interview about this recently, was this, um, what's the word I'm looking for? This belief, or this, you know, this belief really, that there's this, you have to go out and you have to grind, you have to do this. And you're like, hey, you can get financially free, but it's going to be buckle down and grit your way through it and try to make it happen. But like what you're saying, it sounds a lot better. It's thinking through it and being like, well, I mean, if I want to do that, I can, but I don't have to. You just think through the strategy and be like, oh, well, that just makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yes, especially in today's day and age, everybody's about instant gratification. I want it now.
Yeah,
That's short-term thinking.
it is.
And as one of my mentors says in his book, rich people think long-term, poor people think short-term. What can I have now? So when we switched our thinking to long-term, here's the kind of cool thing. Today, my wife and I could pretty much have any boat we want. We could have any car we want. We could buy the property, because we thought long-term. We went through that short-term, get it done, do the extra work, go through that. But today, now the last 20 years, we've had a life most people only dream of. And even when I was flying 200,000 miles a year around the world, BC, before COVID, I still take 6 months a year off to be at home. How many people would love to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
See, it's all in what you when you figure out what you truly want, then yeah, there's going to be times where you have to put that nose down and to the grindstone and get it done. But then it's that I do this with what I see at the end. And in my new book, I also help people understand what I call life phases and how that flows and how they can actually have more balance in their life while they're accomplishing what they want. Because to me, it's not just about getting the success. I don't want you to just get the success and then all of a sudden you're burnt out and you lose it all because you didn't do it in a way that was healthy. I want you to be able to achieve the success while having a strong mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, and financial life, which means families, which means health, which means all areas taken care of. And why not?
Yeah. I can't wait to read it. I'm super excited. That sounds really, really, really fascinating. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit, because we were talking about this a little bit before we got on air. And
Yeah.
I gotta ask, like, I have an app development company. Like you're on your bio, it says app designer. And I was like, oh, I got to talk to this guy, because it's so exciting. So you developed an app for your book, right? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. I was, whenever I do speaking, I always love to learn still. So
Okay.
I was at an event where I was one of the keynote speakers and they had breakout sessions and I went, oh, here's a room I want to go learn. And I walked into the room and I sat down thinking I was in the room I was meant to be in, but I walked into the wrong room. Of course, nothing ever happens the wrong way, right? And the guy starts talking about apps and he was giving all these statistics. And this is back in 2013. And he's talking about all these statistics on apps and what they can do. And I'm like, oh, wrong room. And I stood up and I'm walking out when all of a sudden he said something that stopped me in my tracks. He says, most businesses, they build their business, build their websites, open their doors, and then as an afterthought, they think of maybe doing an app. Why not develop an app to launch your business? And I stopped and I turned around and I went and sat back down. And when he finished his talk and everybody else was done, I went up to him and I said, okay, can you have an app to launch a book? He said, well, tell me a little bit about your book. So I started talking about the steps I wanted to put in my book, because it's a manual, an actual workbook, not just hey, read it and put it on the shelf, make it shelf help. You actually have to do stuff. And he started rattling off all these things that you could do with it in an app. And I'm like, you can do that? He's like, yeah, you can do that. And so all of a sudden we created a friendship and started designing, and we hired a company to start developing it, which I'll tell you, we went through a learning process. We hired the wrong company, spent a lot of money to have crap. I remember my one business partner phoning me on a Sunday going, and we hadn't launched yet, thank God, version 1. And he phones me and he says, I'm sorry for calling you on a Sunday. I said, why are you sorry? And I was driving down to see family with my wife. And he goes, well, last night I had a bad feeling. So I downloaded a hacking tool off the internet. And in 20 minutes, I cracked our whole back end. And he said, open your app right now. And I opened it. And the first thing it did, a pop-up screen said, gotcha. He says, I did that in 20 minutes. He said, he's got so many holes that he hasn't been doing what he said he was. The security is crap. And I said, first of all, why are you sorry for calling me? I'm glad we figured this out before we had users. and their information was at risk. I said, thank you. We're having a talk on Monday. And I ended up firing the developing company. We ended up, putting together version 1, fixing all the security risks and launching it. And here's one of the things, when you want to design an app that I really learned, don't try and make it perfect right off the bat. Because everything we thought we wanted to be, we learned so much by having users walk through and tell us what they liked, they didn't like. Had I tried to figure every what if scenario out, it never would have launched ever. And so now we're doing version 2, which is a much more enhanced version.
Okay, time out. I want to talk to you about that too. But like, if you guys weren't watching the video version, I like put my hands up when he said, don't make it perfect at first. I was like, yes, that's beautiful. So, okay. One of the biggest problems I run into with a lot of my clients is that problem, exactly the way you said it, is that this thing has to be perfect before it's launched. And it's not only apps too. Like I used to do a bunch of different things before I focused just on apps, like websites and funnels and ads and all this different stuff. Right. And I was like, I can't do all that. So I'm just going to do apps. Right. And that is one of, so I've had, I'm not going to name them, but I've had a client that we've been trying to get this one out for so long, and they just keep thinking like, oh, I want to add this. I want to do this. I want to make this happen. And I'm like sitting here, beat my head against the wall, because I'm like, it's okay. You can launch it. Like, people are very forgiving. People are, like you said, there's gold in having people walk through it and get real feedback from real people using the real product.
Because I don't care who you are, you're not going to figure out all the things that could be right, used different or whatever. It's not until actual users use it that you're going to figure it out.
Yeah. And the same true goes back to our money conversation. Like you kind of have to walk through those things to be able to figure it out. There's a lot of theory out there, but to be actually able to step in through it. So briefly tell us.
I would hold up a picture to your client, and I'd say, have a picture of Bill Gates and a picture of Steve Jobs, and say, which way do you want to go? This one, Steve Jobs, isn't going to happen unless you have a lot of money to go behind it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I never thought of that. That's a good one. So, briefly tell us about the version 2 of it. What's going on with that?
So, well, right now we've been coding it all out, and because we're taking one of the things we have in the app, because in my book it's about being able to celebrate your successes. That's one of the steps. And so we had created a success journal, which was every day you put 5 successes a day. And one of the things I like with your website, and when you and I were trying to connect, I'm watching your automated messenger bot, and it's breaking down, because this app creates dreams, and we actually do vision boards on it. And so then when you do your vision board, we actually start breaking it down into what's the daily steps to actually move towards your vision. So it actually breaks all of that down for you once you put your visions in place. And so with the success journal, as an example, we had 5 successes. It was a basic thing. And people love that, but they're like, I want to write more than just 5 little things. So in the new version, it's actually 6 full journals. There's like a dreaming journal. There's a deepest thoughts journal. You actually get to use them instead of just typing something in. It's like you're writing in them. And we did the encryption. The encryption is done so tight that not even us as the developers can read what someone's writing in their journals, because we want to make sure that they feel safe to write their whatever they want, knowing that no one else will be able to access it, that they don't want to. And so that's one example. We had a very basic dynamic 16, one of the dream board versions, you could put 16 pictures and they were just 4 by 4 squares, right? And I had some cool things where you could sit there and say you want to take your family to Hawaii. And so you find a picture on the internet of a waterfall in Hawaii, you put it on there. So every day and at random, it'll bring up one of your dreams. Here's one of your, every time you go in, here's one of your dreams. And so we had that. And then no worries. But then all of a sudden, let's say when you finally accomplish that dream and you actually take your family to Hawaii, you take a picture in front of a waterfall. And so now you take it and overlay it to that original dream picture. And now your dream board comes alive. So it goes, here was your dream. Here's the reality. Here's your dream. And as you do accomplish more, it more comes alive, which motivates you to do more of your dreams. Well, that was a very dynamic one. The new one is using artificial intelligence. That's it's like actually cutting, pasting, sizing, flipping, doing whatever you want. But it's also your pictures being read as you're creating it to give you keywords as you bring pictures up. And my tech partner, he's done some amazing things where you don't even have to download a picture and upload it. You can drag it from one one screen right onto your dream board without having to do the download upload. And it's just some really cool stuff that we've done to enhance.
Wow. That's really, really cool. So what's the name of it?
It's called Amentora. Take the word mentor, put an A at the beginning, A at the end. And not because I'm Canadian, A. It's just, no, it's called Amentora. And we've taken version 1 down because it's not even supported anymore. Version 2, we're still coding out and hoping that over, this year we'll be able to really launch version 2 in a big way, because it's, I just touched on a couple of cool things that's in it.
That's really, really cool. And I mean, you guys think about that, like was delivering pizzas with Domino's, years ago. And here he is building something that's like, that's so cool. That's like a really, really cool idea, Good for you. Like that's so cool. I'm so happy for you. That's awesome.
And here's a key to your listeners. It's what I wanted and need in my life. That's why I made it.
Yeah.
I didn't make it for other people in the beginning. It was what makes a difference in my life. And if I have this as a problem and this helps, wouldn't other people? And that's how it started.
That's one thing I love to tell people too, is like, everyone's always, you read these things about how to make $1 billion idea or all this type of stuff. It's like, you don't need to solve $1 billion idea. You just need to solve the problem that you have. Because there's a lot of other people out there with the same things. We're humans. We all function relatively the same when we think, you know what I mean?
Well, and one of my mentors just reminded me when I was reviewing a training we did with him a couple of years ago. He says, take the look at basics of business. Business is solving a problem for people for a profit. He said, but don't you dare try and solve a problem for someone else that you haven't worked on and solved for yourself. Because that incongruency, people know you're just doing it for the money, not that it's something that you actually have gone through, experience, understand why this is important.
That's good. I like that a lot. Awesome. All right. Well, we only got a couple of minutes here. I know I usually do a segment at the end where I give the person I'm interviewing a chance to ask me any question. I didn't tell you about it. I didn't give you warning. So it's meant to throw you off. So if you have any question, one question for me, fire away.
Yeah. What got you into what you're doing with your podcast? Why did you start this?
Oh man, that's a good one. I've always been a little bit weird, which I like. I mean, I consider myself a weirdo. But I've always, I talk to myself a lot. Like even, I think everywhere we've lived, we moved every few years, and everywhere we've lived, we've had dogs, and I go for a walk outside with them, and I'll be walking down the road and I'll just talk to myself like out loud. I used to be like kind of conscious of like, oh, people are going to think I'm weird. Now I'm like, I just go down, like I'm talking on the phone, just talking, working through problems, working through things that I'm doing, whatever. And one day I was just like, I say some stuff that makes a lot of sense. Like I should share this. And lo and behold, it wasn't trying to be like conceited. It wasn't like, oh, I have cool things to say. I was just like, I've kind of worked through a lot of stuff and I should just share that thing. You know what I mean? So, and then, originally this podcast was meant to be as a supplement to an app that I had originally developed, which is I also just took down. But it kind of evolved into like a business self-help technology, just kind of stuff that just is quirky and I like works? It is. It's really, really fun. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I did it. And just like you, when you have something to share and you have a message to share with people, you just want to get out there and do it, So,
and if I have people really ask listen to what you just said, what you just did, because I know you're recording all of your podcasts, you're actually creating and you're becoming a creation machine, not just your great ideas, but the people that you're bringing on. And if people really understand the brilliance of what you're doing, now you can repurpose that into PDFs, lead captures, a book a year without you having to rewrite it because you've got it all already there. And how you disseminate that information can become an empire. And it all starts with, I tell people, because I talk to myself as well, talking to yourself is not a problem. Even arguing with yourself is not a problem. But the moment you go on Facebook and do a poll to see which part of you is right, then I might be a little concerned.
Ooh, okay. I like that. Well, I've never done that, so I think I'm all right. Awesome. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Where can we go to get your book, to find out more about what you do? Just let us know real quick.
Yeah, Dan, because you've been gracious enough to have me on your podcast, To me, your time is one of your most precious commodities. And the fact that you have listeners listening, I really appreciate that. So as a gift from you and I to them, if they simply go to robertriopel.com, my name, not hard, they actually can download the entire digital copy of my book, Success Left a Clue, as our gift to them. With that caveat, remember it's a workbook. Don't put it on the shelf, make it shelf help. There's action steps. And I even say in the book, hey, did you do the last action? If not, go back, stop reading now, go back, do the action before you continue reading. And also, what I've decided to do this year is one of my give backs is to help people out. When they download the book, they can also schedule in for a 20-minute one-on-one strategy session with me where they'll fill in a questionnaire so I can laser focus in and in 20 minutes help them go to the next level. I don't try to sell them anything. I'm just, here's 20 minutes of sheer value to help you take your life wherever you're struggling up a level.
Just for downloading the book.
Yep.
Awesome. You guys better jump on that. That's a good deal. I like it. Awesome, Robert. Well, that is all we got. Those links will be in the show notes for you guys, just so you know, and available on the Run Your Day app. So yeah, you can check it out there. Awesome.
And I think you and I are going to talk more about apps.
For sure. We're definitely going to nerd out on that stuff. Awesome. All right, Robert. Well, thank you so much for coming on, talking about money, talking about apps, talking about all this stuff. It's super fun. This was a great time. So yeah, you guys check out robertriopel.com, correct?
Well, Riopel, but
Riopel. Why do I keep saying it wrong? Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. Hey, just don't call me late for dinner. We're okay.
Exactly. There you go. All right, my friends. Well, that is all we got for you. Hope you enjoy the show. Hope you keep listening. My name is Dan Hafner. Hope you make it a great rest of your day. Hey, my friend, before you check out from this episode, I have something very awesome to tell you. If you haven't already, you need to download the Run Your Day app right now. It's absolutely amazing and will change your freaking life. It is the official app of this podcast. Now, you might be a regular listener of the show, or maybe you're new to the podcast. And either way, I want you to actually start implementing the things that you hear me talk about on this podcast every single day. I'm going to quote something for you here. Revelation without implementation is simply masturbation, my friend. Yes, I said it. So don't be that guy. Download the Run Your Day app now from either the Apple App Store or Google Play. Or, you know what, even if you boycott both of those stores for some reason, you can access the same app at app.runyourdaypodcast.com. That's app.runyourdaypodcast.com. No download required. We got guided meditations, self-guided chat journeys, which are super freaking cool. And they actually help you run your day and figure out your mental blocks. So it's something you can't afford to miss out on. So please do yourself a favor, do me a favor, and download the Run Your Day app on your phone and take this experience to the next level. I'll see you there.